Good evening, everybody. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Welcome to the Kick-Ass Fantasy Football Show. I am your host, Jumpin' John Prevo, and with me are fantasy expert guests Vince Welch and Evan Ostro. So, fellas, welcome to the show. How you guys doing tonight?
I'm doing all right. How about yourself?
Doing real good.
Yeah, other than the glitch, I'm doing fine. So, working with some new equipment, and we'll just call it user error and move on. How about that?
Fair enough.
All right, so tonight we're going to start the show, and I think a topic near and dear to a lot of our hearts. As we mentioned before, we're definitely an Eagles-based show, a lot of Eagles fans here, and so obviously big news with Garrett Reed's death, and so just condolences to Andy Reid and his family and to the Eagles organization. I know Garrett Reid was actually a big part of the organization, not only from a professional standpoint, but from a personal standpoint as well, sort of growing up during Andy Reid's tenure there. So just wanted to throw that out there and condolences, and, the team I know is steadfast in their devotion to Andy Reid, and they will mourn his loss. So didn't know, Vince, if you had any thoughts on the matter or just anything you want to say, feel free.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, my prayers go out to Andy Reid and his family and friends. It's really, really a tough thing to see. You never want to see something like that happen. And God bless Andy for coming back tonight, not letting his emotions get in the best of him, bouncing back on top, coaching the game tonight, trying to move on and celebrate Garrett the way that Garrett would most likely want him to, which is continue with this team and dedicate the season to him and have a successful year.
I can't imagine what's going through Andy's mind tonight. Just a really tough situation, and I think great to see all the support he's been getting from coaches and players.
Yeah, I'll tell you, and Vince, you brought up a good point how, Michael Vick has come out and said he was dedicating the season to Garrett. And, if there's ever a team that has strong resolve, I do think it's the Eagles. And after last year's showing, they worked hard in the off-season. They've had the off-season together to prepare. And if there's anything else that's going to solidify a team like that, it would be a tragedy such as this, really bringing the team together and for some singular focus. So, not to shine any other light than just what it is, but I do think that the team is really going to come together and bond even more than they already have over this. So, again, thoughts out to the Reid family and to the Eagles organization. Being a fantasy football show, I think we'll move on and we'll talk. There's actually, I believe, 3 remaining holdouts in the NFL, and we have Maurice Jones-Drew, Dwayne Bowe, and Mike Wallace. Those are our 3 actually pretty key players for each team, for the Jaguars, the Chiefs, and the Steelers. Let's discuss a little bit impact, what we see on the horizon, and anything else that may be happening. So, Evan, why don't you start us off with Maurice Jones-Drew?
Yeah, this and the Wallace holdout are the biggest ones. Everyone's saying this Maurice Jones, everyone's saying the one MJD could get really bad, saying he's a real prideful guy, especially after the production and just battles he had to go through last year, getting all the attention on the offense. I don't see how they don't sign him pretty quickly, but the tough thing is many people have said, he led the league in rushing last year and they only won 5 games. So this could get really ugly. I definitely see this going late into the camp, and I've never seen a player going through a holdout and have a successful year in fantasy, hence like Chris Johnson a few years ago. So I definitely think that's a major hit on his fantasy impact this year.
Yeah, I don't get it. If I'm the Jaguars, I'm holding on to Maurice Jones-Drew with dear life. He's their biggest asset, their biggest weapon. I mean, he led the league in rushing last year. He's an outstanding back. He scores touchdowns. He catches the ball out of the backfield. He really does it all for that team. And Evan, you mentioned they only won 5 games last year, so that's why they're hesitant to sign him to a big contract. But I'll tell you what, if they don't sign him, they're going to have trouble getting back to that mark because he's really, really all they got, especially with a young quarterback in Blaine Gabbert, who's unproven, didn't have a great rookie campaign. You do, however, have Justin Blackman coming in there, but we've still yet to see what he can do at the pro level. Got to sign MJD. They got to get him in camp. But, yeah, this will affect his fantasy draft status. But if they do get him, if they do sign him a couple weeks before the season, don't be afraid to take this guy in the first or second round just because he held out. He's a great talent. If he plays 16 games, he's going to have a top 5 fantasy year.
Yeah, the only thing that worries me is, we had a prime example a year ago of Chris Johnson holding out, coming into the season, really not being prepared. And I know there's people want to say how much of a workout warrior that Maurice Jones-Drew is, and it won't affect him, but there's nothing prepares you for getting hit and then having to run. So I do think it matters. I do think camp matters. And no one really likes watching the preseason, but there's a reason why you have it, and that you don't come right into a regular season. So I personally, I'm concerned. I hope it gets resolved. And you're right, they definitely need him for a successful season. So let's see what happens. So we'll move on to Dwayne Bowe, starting wide receiver for Kansas City. What exactly does that mean? Vince, we'll start off with you. Dwayne Bowe, what does his absence mean, and do you see anything coming on the horizon?
Dwayne Bowe, another big-time offensive threat holding out of camp. This is big for the Chiefs. The Chiefs, they have Jamal Charles still banged up from last year's injury. They need him, and they better get him into camp soon, or they're going to really struggle on offense because, like the Jaguars, they do not have much, and this is really their guy right now at the wide receiver position. So, and one of the things about it, fantasy-wise, is that at wide receiver, camp matters a lot more at wide receiver than running back, I believe, because there's changes in the playbooks, changes in routes. You have to get your chemistry together with the quarterback, with the quarterbacks, because when you're changing the schemes and everything, you need to be on the same page. So that's a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, holdouts, you're seeing how they're becoming the New England of the West almost. I mean, this holdout seems pretty intense. Like in New England, they never really gave in, as you saw with Wes Welker this year. So this could get lengthy, but I think when push comes to shove, he comes into camp. And especially because this could be a pretty good year for the Chiefs. A lot of early talk about how they could be a possible sleeper in that division. And you got to have Dwayne Bowe because this division's wide open. But I think at the end he's signed, and the Chiefs have a better offense than what people are going to think.
Yeah, they're with a healthy Jamal Charles this year, or healthier, we'll say. I guess that is yet to play out. There's definitely a lot more potential. I do think the one thing that it gives a chance for Jonathan Baldwin to really shine. He's getting a lot more work in camp. I think he has a lot of talent. So, while Dwayne Bowe is definitely a talented wide receiver, it's possible they don't miss a beat. They got Tony Miyake back at tight end, and if Baldwin develops the way, people are saying he may, or they think he will, it could just kind of be a plug and play, and, Dwayne Bowe is just another disgruntled football player. So, that's definitely a wait and see situation. Let's move on to Mike Wallace, near and dear to my heart, for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So, Evan, why don't you get back to us on Mike Wallace, holdout implications, and what do you see down the road?
Yeah, another successful organization going through a firm holdout. I mean, everyone knows the Steelers' mantra on holdouts: you play out your contract and they don't budge. And if they really stay with that, I mean, Wallace, he for some reason I think he's the only holdout that could actually miss a game or two, because the Steelers are just so notorious for not signing their players. He's huge. I mean, Antonio Brown's made a living off this kid. Their running game is already banged up with Mendenhall. He's Big Ben's go-to deep threat. This, for some reason, I think he's going to miss a game or two, which would be really devastating for them. It's just the Steelers' way of business, and, it's worked, and either Wallace is going to fold in or the Steelers won't. So this will be the one to really follow, I think.
Yeah, this is bad for the Steelers. Mike Wallace really wants a contract extension, and the Steelers really don't want to budge on the negotiations. I agree with Evan. I think he could miss a game or two. But Ben Roethlisberger was quoted on a local radio station in Pittsburgh today. He talked to Mike over the phone, and he said Mike's training very hard, training with his helmet on, getting out there, getting after it. So if he does come back a little late, keep your eye on that waiver wire, keep your eye there, maybe pick him up early in the season, and he'll do big things.
Yeah, I'm not sure how many waiver wires will be on, even with a holdout.
Yeah.
There's always going to be teams that are going to take a flyer on him, just waiting for him to come back. So I think what the Steelers need to do for Mike Wallace is,
I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse.
I'd hate to see the Steelers without Wallace. I have, big sights on Antonio Brown, but, anytime you have a dual threat, I think it's obviously that much more effective. So here's hoping that they do resolve it and, move on. So, all right, we're going to end our first segment there. We talked about the 3 holdouts. We're going to come back talking about some injured running backs and maybe where, what you should do with them during the draft. And then we'll talk about some other significant camp injuries. And, again, this is the Kick-Ass Fantasy Football Show. I'm your host, Jumpin' John Prevost. Please feel free to use our guest line and call in at 877-511-1024. We also have a chat room where you can post questions or comments, and we will get any questions on the air. So we'll be right back with Vince Waltz and Evan Ostro after these messages.
Fantasy football owners, it's draft time, and KickassFantasyFootball.com makes it easy.
How do we make it easy?
Projections from the experts, cheat sheets with your scoring rules.
What else?
Articles all season long, waiver wire picks, trade advice, everything you need to win a championship.
How about a free judgment from FantasyJudgment.com, a $15 value?
Now we're talking.
Subscribe today for just $9.95. We'll throw in a complimentary cruise for 2 to the Bahamas.
Cruise to a championship with KickassFantasyFootball.com.
This fantasy football season, be sure to check out Power Play Fantasy Sports, featuring free and pay-to-play fantasy football games with huge cash prizes. Power Play Fantasy Sports is your home for the 2012 fantasy football season. Visit the website PowerPlayFantasySports.com and use the promo code KICK to receive 20% off your entry in the Power Player Fantasy Football League, featuring a $5,000 grand prize. Again, that's promo code KICK. If you know football, this is the game for you. Visit PowerPlayFantasySports.com today.
Fantasy football owners, the Kick-Ass Fantasy Football Show is back every Sunday this season with everything you need to cruise into a championship. Join me, the professor,
and me, the commish, along with fantasy insider Matt Lowry. Get all your fantasy football news as we break down all the players and tell you who to start and who to trade while we take your calls all show long.
We'll see you every Sunday morning at 9 a.m. all season long here on 97.3 ESPN. Check us out on the web at KickassFantasyFootball.com.
Are you good at fantasy football? Are you used to winning your fantasy league? Well, now put your fantasy skills and savvy to the ultimate test by playing against the rest of the world with Fantasy Football Evolution. Fantasy Football Evolution is the first ever worldwide fantasy football competition. The winner gets $25,000. Go to NextGenFFE.com to sign up today. The only way to know if you're the best is to play against the best. Fantasy Football Evolution at NextGenFFE.com.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Kick-Ass Fantasy Football Show on Blog Talk Radio. I'm your host, Jumpin' John Prevost, and with me are fantasy experts Vince Welts and Evan Ostro. So I just wanted to remind everyone that we do have a website, which is www.kickassfantasyfootball.com. And from now until August 31st, you can get half price, 50% off at $9.95. And throughout the season, there's definitely a variety of tools that we can use to help you win your fantasy league. We got draft tools, we got draft analyzers, up-to-date projections, cheat sheets, injury reports. We have articles, weekly articles, and it's a great way to help you win your league. So www.kickassfantasyfootball.com. So we're going back, and we're going to throw to Evan. We're going to start with some injured running backs, and maybe what you should do with them in your draft. A couple big names out there, and first one we'll throw out is Adrian Peterson. So Evan, what do you think? What do you think's up with Adrian Peterson? What are you going to do with this spot?
Yeah, AP's one. I was in a draft last night, and AP went in the second or third round by one of the players in my league. I think that's a little high. The only reason I think that's a little high is because, first of all, a year off at ACL is early enough, but the fact that it's even less than a year because he tore it so late, I'd really stay away. Your hope with AP, there's a very good chance he could be on the pup, and then say you spend a third-round pick on him, and he misses the first 6 games, and then you're kind of screwed at that point. So you're hoping with AP, if you draft him, that he's there for you at the playoffs, but then are you really going to be that reliant and trustworthy of him? I'd really stay away. It was way too quick of a rebound from the ACL, and I got a feeling he's just going to come back too soon.
Yeah, Peterson keeps saying that he wants to be ready for the Vikings season opener. He's really determined to do that, and that seems very early coming off ACL surgery. A lot of guys do not bounce back that fast. I would be very surprised if he played in the season opener. I see him missing 4 or 5 weeks at least. Maybe if he gets in there before that, he's not going to be very effective. I wouldn't take a chance on him until about the 4th or 5th round. Maybe late in the season he'll start producing back to that level that we're used to seeing Adrian Peterson produce at, but not worth a 2nd or 3rd round pick.
That's pretty interesting. I guess I'm kind of surprised that he's gone that long, and just I guess name recognition in and of itself. But you both brought up some great points, and the fact that it usually takes at least a year to recover from the ACL. I think time is not on his side. So
yeah, it's just scary to take it if you draft a guy that early with that kind of risk. It's just, for me, it's scary because there's a chance that there could be no upside. There is obviously a big upside with Adrian Peterson. He could come back and do great, but I think the risk is a little too big.
Yeah, especially if you're drafting him in front of guys like his average draft position right now is higher than Fred Jackson's, Steven Jackson's. Those are guaranteed safe 1,000 yards, your touchdowns here and there. Truthfully, fantasy can get hectic enough. I just wouldn't want the headache, truthfully.
Well, what do you think, Vince? We'll start with you. What do you think about Toby Gerhart?
I think it's great value.
You know what? It's definitely a high value pick because he's so big and near the goal line. You can give him the ball, and he's going to score a lot of touchdowns. He may not put up, 1,300 yards, but I could see him having a nice season, 800 to 1,100 yards, 10, 11 touchdowns, especially if this Peterson thing doesn't, if his knee doesn't heal very quickly.
Yes, a lot of people say they're going to be one of the worst teams in football. So how much will they be able to run the ball? He's good out of the back. He's good out of the backfield. They got Khalil. And even when AP's back, they're not going to give AP the lion's share of the load. And like you said, he's a big back, and if you're in a touchdown-only league, he can get you a touchdown here and there. And we know he can handle the load of a season. He dominated Stanford, and I think he's a great pick, especially where he's getting drafted. He's getting drafted behind somebody.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
And especially because with Peterson coming off injury, in goal line and in close yardage situations, they're not going to be wanting to put him in the pile with all the big linemen and in the trenches. They're going to want to put Gerhart in those situations, which will lead to some fantasy points.
And he's already kind of just as, if he's not better, he might be a better receiver than Peterson was anyway, and you figure they're going to be down in a lot of games too.
Yeah, exactly. And with Christian Ponder, still only going into his second year, that check down receiver out of the backfield could get a lot of catches.
So I'm going to let you guys in on a little secret strategy. And for any of you listeners out there that end up winning the league by following the strategy, I would appreciate a cut. And 10% would be more than enough. Here's how I see it. So every year, drafting is only one part of winning a fantasy championship. The other is your roster management and then, trades and waiver wire pickups. So I think you can't lose by going after Toby Gerhart. Obviously, you're not going to pick him in front of, as you mentioned, maybe Steven Jackson or Fred Jackson. But I think maybe you target him early, depending on maybe waiting a little bit if you haven't had your draft yet to see other reports coming out from AP. But getting Gerhart, and even if you only ride him for a couple games, if he's, I agree. I can't see AP coming back for a couple games. Ride Gerhart, and then you're scrounging the waiver wire to get the replacement, because there will be someone out there. So a little bit of strategy there, a little bit of homework that you're going to have to do throughout the year. But I think it's something, it's a viable strategy that you may want to think about. So let's go. A couple other not as big names that are out there that are injured, but as for running backs go, you're always scrambling for that one guy that's going to do it for you. So let's talk a little bit about the Detroit running back situation. Javid Best still not cleared, from his concussion, and then Michael Lee Shore is coming back. Not only does he have his suspension and off-season problems, but he has his Achilles injury that he's coming off from last year. So, what do you guys think about the whole Detroit running back situation, and what are you going to do with them? So, Evan, why don't you start us off?
Who started?
Evan, why don't you get started off?
Yeah, I'm just going to stay away. You never want to, first of all, Javid Best, he's had injuries, problems since college. He had a horrible neck injury at Cal. LeShore has already been arrested twice this year, coming off injury too. Kevin Smith, could be the best back, and he gets injured more than both of them. This team just does not run the ball. They threw the ball a crazy amount. You might be able to ride Best for a little, like last year, he had a little stretch of 2 weeks, and then I just do not want a running back with concussion problems, because the first hit he gets there, they're going to be extremely cautious. I'm just going to stay away completely.
Yeah, they actually just signed Mike Bell and Jerome Harrison as well. So that tells me that they want to get some support in the backfield, because they don't have a lot of faith in Javid Best's health, and LeShore's off-the-field antics have just, not been where they want them. So I would stay away, too. They're going to be spreading the ball around in the backfield. And then plus Detroit's offense, it's a lot of running gun, not really getting the running back the ball as much as you would get from like a Steelers offense or, something where they pound it out, not that type of ball. So it's really not worth it here. I agree with Evan. Kind of stay away, maybe in the late rounds, but, not early for sure.
Yeah, and, someone's got to carry the rock. It's probably going to be a crapshoot. I'm really high on Matt Stafford this year, and obviously Calvin Johnson has produced on a yearly basis. So it's probably best to really steer away from that Detroit running game. And, like I said, later rounds, kind of come garbage time, there you go. But it's definitely a tough call. Let's move on just a little bit. One thing that interests me, on the Tuesday night show, we talked about the enigma that Arizona is, and part of that problem is the running game. They have a promising, I believe, second-year player in Ryan Williams. They got Beanie Wells, who's produced at times, but both of them are bit by the injury bug. And so I'm wondering what you guys think about that whole situation in Arizona, and especially with their questionable quarterback situation. What does that mean, and what are you doing with Arizona? So, Vince, why don't we throw it back to you? What are you doing with Arizona? Is it more of the same as Minnesota?
Oh, yeah. I don't know. I don't like Arizona's offense at all. They looked horrible in that Hall of Fame game. Kevin Cobb came in first throw, just an awful, awful pick. That's not going to help support a run game with two guys that have had injury problems. Beanie's had injury problems since his days at Ohio State. Ryan Williams, we really haven't seen anything yet from him in the NFL. Definitely wouldn't use an early pick on either of those running backs, especially when the passing game is so dismal. And I guess the way you could look at it is because the passing game is so bad, they're going to be leaning on the running backs, but I don't see much production coming out of this backfield.
Yeah, I mean, another thing that's really scary about this backfield is one, both of them are injured. I mean, Beanie is the definition of the 4:15 nightmare start. He's always questionable. I mean, that's the worst part. They're always in the 4 o'clock game, so you never know. But for some reason, I don't know. I guess people have been burned by it. Beanie still had 10 touchdowns and 1,000 yards last year. I mean, for where he's going, he's going like 26 back right now. I believe you just got to take a chance on the fact that, someone's got to do something because, Ryan Williams tore his patella. That just sounds horrible. Beanie, I don't know, it's another weird situation. He had 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns. You just got to go with Beanie, but no way am I reaching for him.
All right, Evan, you're letting facts get in the way of a good story. Arizona's running game stinks. Don't let the fact that Beanie had 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns get in the way of any opinion you may have. Come on now. Actually, I like that. You're pulling the good numbers out, and it's a good thing to remember. Even with some injuries last year, Beanie Wells is still produced as a not necessarily a number one running back, but pretty darn close to it. So
that's the Rams twice.
Yeah, but if you do draft him, beware. Like Evan said, he's always questionable. So there's going to be a lot of times where you're making your lineup Saturday or Sunday, and you're thinking, do I start him? Do I sit him? And sometimes it'll come back to bite you. So beware on that pick.
Well, definitely a lot of risk in any pick you have. Everyone's always one hit away from being on the IR. So, there's a lot of interesting situations going on. Let's talk about one more running back. Big news, actually, that's fairly recent, and that's Trent Richardson. And went under the scope and seems to be okay. So we'll call it a minor procedure, but is any surgery really minor? So, Vince, why don't you start us off with Trent Richardson and what you see going on and what it means for him?
I hope for Trent and the Browns it's as small of an injury as they say. It was apparently a very simple procedure. He should be back by week 1. I really hope it doesn't hurt his ability to cut because he's something else to watch. And this was a year where the Browns got 2 key first-round picks in Brandon Weeden and Trent, and things are finally looking up. And to get these guys on the field is so important. So in order for the Browns to be successful, Trent has to be healthy. And if he is healthy, I see him having a big impact in his rookie season and being a pretty big fantasy impact. I'm talking second, maybe third round here.
It's just being in Cleveland just kills you, I think. They've been ravaged by injuries. Joe on defense, Joe Hayden, Phil Taylor, Gokong, all with serious injuries. They're already a bad team. In that division, they're going to get beat up a lot. I don't know how. Maximum they're going to be able to run the ball for 3 quarters, sometimes only 2, because they're going to be down so much. Especially with him being a rookie and such a high draft pick, they're going to be extremely cautious. The only reason why you would want to draft him is because they really don't have an inside back. But I just don't want a rookie running back in the AFC North who's already starting the season off with 2 knee surgeries. And it just seems like a bad Cleveland situation.
I don't know though, because like you said, Maurice Jones-Drew led the league in rushing last year, and they only won 5 games. They were down in a lot of games, and he still managed to get his numbers. I understand the concern with the injuries. 2 knee injuries is tough, but with a rookie quarterback coming in, I see them really trying to pound the ball, put the ball on the ground. While Weeden is 28 years old, older than most rookies, I still think they're going to try to protect him a little bit and establish that ground game early in games. So I think you could see Trent have a good year, but yeah, definitely risk with the knees.
The only Jacksonville, people forget they had a top 10 defense that kept them in a lot of games, and they were in a pretty bad division, so they weren't blown out that many times. It's just they're going to be down in a ton of games. I just don't see it. AFC South compared to the AFC North is 2 different beasts.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I think, Cleveland, I think, is going to be one of those teams that surprise people about how much better that they've gotten. I think their defense was coming on, last year. They got a little bit of, with Fedita's suspension, and they actually had linebacker Chris Gokong suffered an Achilles injury, so he's out. So, they may not be as strong as originally thought. But so there's definitely a lot of potential, for their offense to be better. And I think, but one thing I've noticed, and which has surprised me, is I've seen Trent Richardson go as high as 18 in some drafts, and I think that's way too high. I think maybe
that's too high.
Yeah. So I'm not sure I'd pick him in the second round. Maybe in the third round. I don't know. I'd have to analyze it a little more. But so I definitely think there's some potential there. But Cleveland, especially with the whether you think it may affect them or not, the sale, it's really going to do something for them. So I think Trent Richardson is going to be one of those big question marks. And what do you do with him? I'm not really sure.
Do or do not. There is no try.
Yeah, even the great Yoda is not really sure what you do with him, and it's
running back is unbelievable this year.
It's a tough call because you want to find that diamond in the rough, that guy that you're going to be able to go to week in, week out. Trent Richardson has been slated as the go-to guy. Has been anointed, or whatever you want to say. But can you really trust it? So, and another thing, I actually finally completed my write-up for the AFC North. And one thing that we're really noticing is Montario Hardesty is actually looking healthy and looking good in camp. So, even if Richardson does come back, they may ease him into it. So he may not be the bellwether running back in the first couple of games, but he could look for him towards the end of the season. So, all right, well, that's going to wrap up that next segment, and we're going to go through another commercials for our wonderful sponsors. And when we come back, we're going to continue with Fitz Wells and Evan Ostro, and we're going to go with a little bit of a top five at each position, just an early indicator of where we're all leaning. And just remember, this is the Kick-Ass Fantasy Football Show. Our website is www.kickassfantasyfootball.com, and please feel free to call in with your questions and comments at 877-511-1024 or go on to us in the chat. So thanks a lot, guys, and we'll be back in 2 minutes.
This fantasy football season, be sure to check out Power Play Fantasy Sports, featuring free and pay-to-play fantasy football games with huge cash prizes. Power Play Fantasy Sports is your home for the 2012 fantasy football season. Visit the website powerplayfantasysports.com and use the promo code KICK to receive 20% off your entry in the Power Player Fantasy Football League, featuring a $5,000 grand prize. Again, that's promo code KICK. If you know football, this is the game for you. Visit PowerPlayFantasySports.com today.
Fantasy football owners, it's draft time, and KickassFantasyFootball.com makes it easy.
How do we make it easy?
Projections from the experts, cheat sheets with your scoring rules.
What else?
Articles all season long, waiver wire picks, trade advice, everything you need to win a championship.
How about a free judgment from FantasyJudgment.com, a $15 value?
Now we're talking.
Subscribe today for just $9.95 and we'll throw in a complimentary cruise for two to the Bahamas.
Cruise to a championship with KickassFantasyFootball.com.
Are you good at fantasy football? Are you used to winning your fantasy league? Well, now put your fantasy skills and savvy to the ultimate test by playing against the rest of the world with Fantasy Football Evolution. Fantasy Football Evolution is the first ever worldwide fantasy football competition. The winner gets $25 grand. Go to nextgenffe.com to sign up today. The only way to know if you're the best is to play against the best. Fantasy Football Evolution at nextgenffe.com.
Don't let your fantasy issues become a reality. Fantasy Judgment is the premier dispute resolution service for all fantasy sports leagues. Led by attorney Michael Stein, the Supreme Court of Fantasy Judgment will resolve any and all issues or conflicts that arise in fantasy leagues. This includes disputed trades, collusion, abuse of power by league commissioners, lineup and roster errors, draft issues, score discrepancies, and interpretation of league rules. We alleviate the burden for league commissioners and allow everyone to focus on winning their leagues rather than arguing over disputes. Visit www.fantasyjudgment.com.
All right, this is the Kick-Ass Fantasy Football Show. I am your host, Jumpin' John Prevost, and we're back with fantasy experts Vince Welts and Evan Ostro. And I got to tell you that last commercial from our sponsor talking about fantasy judgment, and I really like that. I don't know if you guys have really ever had that big problem that you just couldn't settle amongst your league. Whether it's a commissioner action, collusion on trade, owners stop not playing, trying to win. But I really think that fantasy judgment's a great offer and a great enhancement to any fantasy player. So, have you guys really come into that you really needed that fantasy judgment?
So, I'm sorry.
Have you ever really come into that spot where you've really wanted someone that could come in and adjudicate your fantasy issue and just come to a resolution so you aren't fighting with your friends?
100%. Last year I was in right around the last week. One of my friends made a real sketchy trade with one of my other friends. I went crazy. No one listened to me, but now we got veto. And that, I mean, you can just do like a veto vote in your league, and that could work.
Yeah, what we do in my league is the commissioner just has to approve all trades and transactions.
Yeah, but I think the good thing about the fantasy judgment is having an outsider come in, and that way there's no bias or perceived bias, and I think it's really it's a really great enhancement to as a sponsor and to any fantasy league. So, all right, guys, let's go ahead and let's talk about it's early in the preseason, but everyone has their favorites, everyone has their rankings. And since some people have even already drafted, it's definitely something you've thought about. Let's do a little bit of a top five. Vince, why don't you start us off? We'll do quarterback first, since that's seems to be the key position anymore. Who do your top five quarterbacks?
Okay, number one, hard for me to go against Aaron Rodgers. Got to put him there. Just the system is unbelievable. Matt Flynn came in and threw for astronomical numbers too. So, Aaron Rodgers is a great quarterback plus the system, and he's got a plethora of receivers and Finley, Jennings, Nelson, Jones, guys that can run after the catch as well. So I think he's solidified his spot as the number one fantasy quarterback. Number two, I'm going to go Tom Brady, just a steady guy, always throwing for 4,000 yards, 25 touchdowns, seems to be there every single year in the top five. Can't go wrong with that pick. Number three, I'm going to go Cam Newton here. I really think he's going to have an even bigger season than he did last year. Had obviously an unbelievable rookie campaign, has so much talent, has the size and the arm strength of a guy like Big Ben, and the speed of a tight end to get around the edge when pressure's coming, can rush for the touchdown, can throw for the touchdown, a dual threat. Can't go wrong with that pick. Four, I'm going to go Drew Brees, even in light of everything that's happened with Roger Goodell. He seems to be one of those guys like Brady who's a machine year in and year out, knows his system, is committed to the team, has weapons, takes advantage of them. Good to throw for 350 yards every time he's at home, every time he's in that dome with no wind. And then my fifth quarterback is going to be Matthew Stafford of the Detroit Lions. Arguably has the best receiver in the league in Calvin Johnson, cannon for an arm, coming into his fourth NFL season, really coming into his own, has the playbook under his, but he knows the playbook like the back of his hand by now. Threw for 5,000 yards last season. Definitely another good pick.
My ranking pick for you're going.
No, go ahead, Evan. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty similar. Rodgers, I'm going with the fact that you get more points for rushing. So Rodgers is your one, Brady's your two, McDaniels will refuse to throw and will run up scores. Breeze, because their defense is so bad. And I went Cam in front of Stafford just because of the rushing touchdown factor, but Stafford is going to, as you see, they already have no running game, so that's a pretty consensus quarterback.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I mean, all picks are good picks. I think, Drew Brees drops a little from last year's end of season's rankings, I was a little bit worried about him coming in because of all the turmoil. He looked good on the first preseason game, but he can't, having the year he had 2 years in a row, it just seems unlikely. But I actually end up liking Matt Stafford 4, and I'm going to throw in Michael Vick at number 5. I think the Eagles are poised through good. Yeah, of course, I'm keeping my fingers crossed about his health, but I think he, in all honesty, any quarterback is kind of the same way. So,
he
they're
definitely has
all one way. Yeah, we got happy receivers. Again, as we mentioned earlier in the show, with the tragedy that occurred, may just solidify that team. And the reason why I dropped Cam Newton out, he would be my 6th, but I can't see him rushing for as many touchdowns as he did last year, especially with bringing in Tolbert. And I think he's going to vulture not only rushing touchdowns, but actually maybe catching some of the short yardage TDs out of the backfield rather than Cam Newton running. So I think he's going to take a hit in touchdown and still be going to be a great quarterback and number 1 lock. But, just kind of dropping him down, moving Michael Vick up. Maybe it's a little homerism coming in, but, that's the way it's going. So, all right, so that's top 5 quarterback. Let's move on to running back. So, Evan, why don't you go ahead and start us off with running back?
All right, I'm going with Mr. Consistent, Arian Foster. The O-line's unbelievable. 2, I'm going Ray Rice. 3, I'm going LaShawn McCoy. 4, I'm going Chris Johnson. And 5, I'm going Ryan Matthews.
All right, I have pretty similar, couple changes. Number 1, I'm going with LaShawn McCoy. No one cuts like him. Love his game. Think he's going to have a great year. Number 2, Arian Foster. Past 2 years has been the top 3 back. Can't go wrong there. 3, Ray Rice. Always the number 1 option for the Ravens. 4, I'm going to go Matt Forte. Improved Bears offense this year. I think he's going to do real big things. And 5, Chris Johnson.
Okay. A lot of these rankings, it's really hard. There's such minute differences between some of them, so it is really hard to tell. Especially the top 3, you're going to hit a home run on. I actually like Ray Rice as number 1. I just think he's real solid. The Ravens are more of a ground and pound team, and Ray Rice doesn't have anyone nipping at his heels for carries. I've actually changed my tune a little bit, and I'm moving LaShawn McCoy up. I was worried about his touches, but he was a touchdown machine last year. And again, he's another one that doesn't have any clear backup, so he's really not worried about someone stealing touches from him. And I'm actually on Chris Johnson, number 3. Word out of camp that he's looking like Chris Johnson 2 years ago. He's got full off season. He's been in a camp, and they're actually talking changing their offense a little bit. So it may not be just more of a pound game, but maybe more of a run and shoot, and I think he can thrive in that as well. The reason why I have Arian Foster down at 4 is just he does have competition at running back. I mean, now clearly Arian Foster is a number 1 every time running back. So on almost any team he's going to be getting the majority of the carries, but due to his injury history, that there's Ben Tate's come up and stolen carries and actually performed like a number 1 running back himself. So I think he will lose some carries. I also think Matt Schaub, I believe he's in a contract year. He's got a lot to prove, so he may be airing the ball out a little bit. And then I'm going to go with Ryan Matthews, number 5. That's a little bit of a man crush that I've had on Matthews, and I think it's time for him to put up or shut up. And if he can't, then definitely Forte is in the mix for top 5. But I'm going to go with Ryan Matthews. So there we have it. There's top 5 from Jumpin' John. So I'll tell you what, we're going to take another quick commercial break. Our segment's been running a little bit long, so let's take that break right here, and we'll finish up with some wide receivers and tight ends. And then for any remaining time, we'll continue to talk about some draft strategies that we've seen. And this is the Kick-Ass Fantasy Football Show. I'm your host, Jumpin' John Prevo, and please feel free to call in at 877-511-1024 or jump in our chat room. So here we go. We'll be back in 2 minutes.
Don't let your fantasy issues become a reality. Fantasy Judgment is the premier dispute resolution service for all fantasy sports leagues. Led by attorney Michael Stein, the Supreme Court of Fantasy Judgment will resolve any and all issues or conflicts that arise in fantasy leagues. This includes disputed trades, collusion, abuse of power by league commissioners, lineup and roster errors, draft issues, score discrepancies, and interpretation of league rules. We alleviate the burden for league commissioners and allow everyone to focus on winning their leagues rather than arguing over disputes. Visit www.fantasyjudgment.com. Are you good at fantasy football? Are you used to winning your fantasy league? Now put your fantasy skills into the ultimate test by playing against the rest of the world with Fantasy Football Evolution. Draft your team and then manage it through a 10-week regular season, a 1-week elimination round, and finally, if you're good enough, a 64-team tournament that will determine the first ever Fantasy Football Evolution champion. The winner of Fantasy Football Evolution receives $25,000, cash prizes paid to the top 16 players. Visit www.nextgenffe.com for more details. The only way to know if you're the best is to play against the best.
Fantasy football owners, the Kick-Ass Fantasy Football Show is back every Sunday this season with everything you need to cruise into a championship. Join me, the Professor,
and me, the Commish, along with fantasy insider Matt Lowry. Get all your fantasy football news as we break down all the players and tell you who to start and who to trade while we take your calls all show long.
We'll see you every Sunday morning at 9 a.m. all season long here on 97.3 ESPN. Check us out on the web at kickassfantasyfootball.com. Fantasy football owners, it's draft time, and kickassfantasyfootball.com makes it easy.
How do we make it easy?
Projections from the experts, cheat sheets with your scoring rules.
What else?
Articles all season long, waiver wire picks, trade advice, everything you need to win a championship.
How about a free judgment from fantasyjudgment.com, a $15 value?
Now we're talking.
Subscribe today for just $9.95 and we'll throw in a complimentary cruise for two to the Bahamas.
Cruise to a championship with kickassfantasyfootball.com.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for staying with us. Welcome back to the Kick-Ass Fantasy Football Show. And Evan Ostro and Vince Welts are our resident experts for Thursday night's show, and we're back for our final segment. So, all right, fellas, we've hit the quarterback and running back quick top five. I think there's a lot of agreement from amongst ourselves. Maybe not quite the order, but let's see how we do on wide receiver. That seems to be usually the one that has the most controversy to it. So, Evan, why don't you start us off? Wide receiver, who do you have in top five?
All right. 1 is unquestioned with Calvin. 2 is Mr. Consistency and Fitz. 3, I just think he's a freak of a wide receiver, and they're going to be a much better offense than people think. A.J. Green. 4, I'm going Roddy White. And 5, I'm going Greg Jennings.
All right. For me, I got a little bit different list here. For me, Megatron definitely number 1, undisputed, just a freak of nature. 2, I'm really looking for big things out of this Houston offense again this year. If Matt Schaub and Andre Johnson can both stay healthy, I think Johnson's the number 2 guy here. 3, I got Wes Welker. In my mind, he is the most consistent receiver in the NFL, especially with Brady. It's like watching a machine work. 4, I got Larry Fitzgerald coming in Arizona Cardinals, even though they don't have much help at the quarterback position. He's just a stud. There's no beating around the bush there. And number 5 may surprise people a little bit. I'm going Brandon Marshall, coming to Chicago, hooking back up with Cutler. Cutler's underachieved, ever since he's been drafted. He's got big play potential. He's got a big arm. I think him and Marshall hook up this year, and Marshall has a great year.
All right. So, again, wide receiver I think is where you're going to find the most disparity. And since I'm hosting the show, I'm going to do what I want, and I'm going to shoot you guys down a little bit. How about that? I think undisputed Calvin Johnson is number 1. I think he's pretty much going to be number 1 on everyone's board. Once we get into sleepers, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Detroit. But and then you had Evan, you had Larry Fitzgerald at 2, and Vince, you had Andre Johnson number 3. And that, I think you may be able to flip-flop them at times. I think with Larry Fitzgerald, you can say there's not much passing game in Arizona, but he always seems to produce, whether he has a great quarterback or not. So, I think keeping Larry Johnson at either 2 or 3, and then Andre Johnson at either 2 or Larry Fitzgerald at 2 or 3, and then Andre Johnson at either 2 or 3 can't go wrong. The only reason why I would maybe choose Andre Johnson over Larry Fitzgerald is, I do think they're going to throw a little bit more. I think, in the contract year that, it's going to be more of a passing fest down in Houston. So I would look to see more passing yardage. And so, maybe Andre Johnson, Larry Fitzgerald. I tell you, I'm really stuck at Greg Jennings. Not really sure where to put him. I sort of had him at number 4, and then I kind of took him out. I'm not even sure that he's going to be the number 1 receiver on Green Bay this year. I think, between him and Jordy Nelson is definitely a 1A. But that could be an interesting battle to watch. But I'll tell you who I do like is I do like A.J. Green. I think there's some big things in for him in Cincinnati. They can only get better. And I can't believe, Vince, that you put Brandon Marshall at number 5. I mean, I really can't. That's just I know he's got a great rapport with Jay Cutler, and I do expect big things, I guess you say bigger things out of Chicago, but I'm not sure. I'm not really that high on Jay Cutler, so I can't be that high on Brandon Marshall. And then, Roddy White, he's got a lot of competition with Julio Jones down in Atlanta, so I'm not sure they're going to be spreading the ball around a little bit more. So I'm not sure he was worthy of a top 5 this year. He certainly didn't show it last year. And then with Wes Welker, Vince, he seems to be the forgotten man every year. All he does is produce. But I think maybe the addition of Brandon Lloyd, they've got a couple other receivers in New England as well, but Brandon Lloyd, I think, is really going to steal some thunder from Wes Welker, especially as, he had trouble late signing his franchise tender, so they may not, want to be thrown to him as well. So he's not going to get the, they don't want to give him the money next year that they're giving him this year. I'll tell you who's sneaking on mine, and I really like Antonio Brown this year. I think with or without Mike Wallace, he's really shown what he can do as a downfield threat. I think Todd Haley is going to highlight whatever he can highlight, and what he has right now is Antonio Brown. So I like him sneaking in the top 5. So I'm going to go with Calvin Johnson, Andre Johnson, Larry Fitzgerald, A.J. Green, and Antonio Brown. So that would be my top 5. So let's do one more real quick, Evan. We've got time to do top 5 tight ends, and so let's see what you got for tight ends.
Tight ends, your top 2, I mean, it doesn't really matter. I guess I just think Graham's 1 because they lost Meacham, so it means only more targets for him, and in New England they only added targets, and he's coming off an injury. 3, I really think people just completely always forget about Jason Witten. I mean, he's not the sexiest pick, but he's consistent, and that's all I want if I'm spending that high of a draft pick. 4, I'm going Vernon. I still don't think Alex Smith is going to develop a rapport with anyone else to trust him over Vernon. And 5, I guess I just want to go with a crazy Graham Gronkowski pick. I think it's time for Brandon Pettigrew to really step up and become that, with everyone paying attention to Calvin in the red zone, he's another big threat Stafford will love throwing to in the red zone. I think he could have a really big breakout year.
Yeah, I would take Gronk 1, but either way, Graham and Gronkowski, far and away the 2 best tight ends. Can't go wrong either way. Graham number 2, obviously, but it's almost 1A and 1B. 3, I'm going to go with, I like Jason Witten as well, just watching the Eagles all my life and watching NFC East games. Jason Witten's always impressive, Mr. Reliable, Tony Romo's favorite target, going to have a big year this year. Number 4, Jermichael Finley continues to improve. Green Bay really slings it. He's a big threat. He's also got speed. Tough matchup for a safety because he's big, and tough matchup for a linebacker because he's got a lot of quickness. And number 5, I'd have to go with Vernon Davis. I fell in love with Vernon Davis after that playoff game where he scored the touchdown and came off the field crying. He's got a lot of heart. Him and Alex Smith have a great rapport. I see him having a big year. And I wanted to say that although I didn't have him in the top 5, I like Evan's pick of Brandon Pettigrew coming out of Oklahoma State. People thought he was going to do big things, and now with Stafford and Johnson having that rapport, it's time for him to step in there as that second or third option and do his thing.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I really like that Pettigrew pick as well. It's kind of a bold pick. He's I liked him last season. He kind of disappointed, so honestly I kind of forgot about him a little bit just from that standpoint. There's definitely, I think, 5 that stand out a little bit more in my mind, if not 6, but definitely a good option at tight end and someone with a lot of upside, especially as we talked about Detroit not having much of a running game. So I like Ram at number 1. He was a machine last year. They lost Meacham, so, maybe he sees the ball a little bit more. Gronkowski at number 2 then. I just can't see him having quite the year he had last year. I mean, it was almost unreal what he did last year. I actually like Antonio Gates at number 3, so he'd be my pick that mixes up the order a little bit. I think he's healthy. He lost some weight, and, losing Vincent Jackson, from the wide receiving core, there's going to be a few more opportunities for Gates. And then, Jason Witten and Jermichael Finley round out my top 5. Witten is very steady. He had sort of a down year last year, but, some of the issues that the receiving core is having in Dallas, he's definitely the one to step up. And then, Finley on a pass-happy Green Bay offense, so they don't take the foot off the throttle ever. So I think, I think it's a good, solid tight end core. You don't have to have Graham or Gronkowski to really score well tight end. So there you go. All right, so we're about done with this show. It's been a great opportunity to host again. It's the 2nd week in a row. I've really enjoyed meeting the 2 of you, Vince and Evan. So just want to point out I've been really impressed with your fantasy knowledge and your presentation on how you're pulling out some of these numbers. I've just been very impressed. So I think your preparation and your knowledge is great, and you're definitely a welcome addition to the Kick-Ass Fantasy Football team.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, so hopefully we'll be continuing throughout the year. All right, so I just want to remind everyone we have a Tuesday night show at 9 o'clock and a Wednesday show at 9 o'clock on Blog Talk Radio. Our Sunday morning show at 8 o'clock for ESPN on ESPN 97.3, and our Thursday night show is at 7 o'clock. Now we did have a special show at 10 o'clock last night for a Wednesday night show with the professor and the commissioner. So I just wanted to let everyone know that the Kick-Ass Fantasy Football machine is up and running. Our website is www.kickassfantasyfootball.com. And again, we are offering until August 31st a 50% reduction on the yearly cost. So it's $9.95 through until August 31st. And again, we got a draft analyzer. So after you're done your draft, plug it in and see how we did. We have cheat sheets. We're going to throughout the year. We're going to have projections, injury reports, other articles that from our fantasy staff that we are going to create on a weekly basis. Who to trade for, waiver wire report, and so subscribe today and win your league. So a couple minutes left. Just any last thoughts for you guys, Vince or Evan? So Vince, any last thoughts on the show tonight or on what you're doing for?
Just wanted to say, Eagles tonight, first preseason game. First look at Michael Vick in that offense after the tragic death of Garrett Reed. Excited to see how they respond. They actually already started today. It's midway through the first quarter. So watch that, and hopefully they play well and show some promising signs.
All right, Evan.
Shiano just keeps coming out of Buccaneers camp raving about Doug Martin calling him a 3-down back, and he's really a hidden gem in the draft. And I can't wait till next Thursday.
All right, so I take it you're a Bucs fan then, or just little tidbits from Tampa Bay?
No, just draft tidbits, trying to help people because it's running back so barren,
Okay, so great last-minute fantasy advice from fantasy expert Evan Ostro, and thank you all for listening to our show. I've had a great time. Again, I'm Jumpin' John Prevost, and this is the Kick-Ass Fantasy Football Show.